What if the biggest threat in the wild is not a beast, but a human? This story shows how thin the line is between friendship and betrayal when the truth is at stake. This is the movie, The Edge. A plane carrying an elderly billionaire, Charles Morse, lands at an Alaskan airport. With him is his young wife, a fashion model named Mickey, and a film crew that arrived for a photo shoot against the backdrop of wild nature. After arrival, the whole group transfers to a float plane and heads to a rented mansion hidden deep in the harsh wilderness of Alaska. The owner of the house immediately warns the guests, hide all food, because the smell can attract bears. Charles increasingly notices how Mickey exchanges looks with the crew leader, Bob. It seems there is something more between them than just a working relationship. In the evening, Mickey asks Charles to make her a sandwich. Going down to the kitchen, he notices that the front door is open and food is left on the table. He closes the door, makes the sandwich, and heads back to the living room when a bear suddenly blocks his path. The next moment, it turns out to be just Bob in disguise. The crew decided to surprise Charles for his birthday. The evening continues in a more relaxed atmosphere. Mickey gives her husband a pocket watch with an engraving, and Bob gives him a knife in a case, a perfect souvenir for a man who loves books and knowledge. In the morning, the film crew gets to work. Mickey is still glancing at Bob, and Charles notices it again, but Bob is unhappy with the footage. He sees a photo on the wall of an Indian named Jack Hawk. According to the owner, Jack lives somewhere in the forest by the lake, and Bob decides to find him, hoping to get unique shots. They convince Charles to join the search, and he agrees. They take the float plane to Jack's cabin, but upon arrival, they find out he has gone hunting. Bob finds a note with coordinates and insists on continuing the search. Up in the sky, they admire the majestic landscapes of Alaska, until suddenly, out of nowhere, a flock of geese flies straight at them. The birds hit the plane and it loses control. The pilot fights until the very last second to save the passengers, trying to land the plane on the water. But the impact is too violent and the plane sinks. Thanks to the pilot's sacrifice, 3 of them manage to survive, but the pilot dies. After making it to the shore, they build a fire using smoke flares that Charles managed to grab. In the morning, the survivors realize that rescue will be difficult. No one knows where they are, and the only clue that could guide the search party is the note Bob brought with him. Using a paperclip, a leaf, and a puddle of water, Charles builds a makeshift compass. He manages to find the right direction, and the survivors head out. During a break, Charles confronts Bob about his flirting with Mickey. But Bob denies everything, claiming it's just a professional relationship. The men keep moving along their route, but soon, a massive bear blocks their path and charges at them. They run for their lives through the forest, with the beast hot on their heels. Spotting a fallen tree trunk over a mountain river, they try to cross to the other side. Charles is the last to cross, and the bear begins to shake the trunk. Charles loses his balance and falls into the rushing river, losing the bag with the smoke flares. Bob and Stephen rush to help just in time, pulling Charles to safety. Left without his prey, the bear walks away, leaving the exhausted men on the riverbank. After catching their breath, the trio continues their journey. Soon, they stumble upon something that crushes their spirits: the remains of the campfire they built the previous night. Realizing they are walking in circles, panic sets in. Stephen blames Bob for dragging them into this dangerous adventure. To calm things down, Charles asks Stephen to sharpen a branch to use for fishing. However, the young man slips and severely cuts his leg. Charles treats the wound and orders Bob to bury the bloody pant leg so the smell won't attract bears. Because of the injury, they are forced to camp and build a makeshift shelter. Suddenly, Charles notices the bloody piece of cloth hanging on a branch, the very cloth Bob was supposed to bury. Sitting by the fire, Stephen spots a faint silhouette in the darkness. Out of nowhere, the bear attacks. The beast grabs the young man. Charles and Bob try desperately to fight off the animal and save their friend, but the bear won't back down. Realizing they are helpless, the men flee from this horrific scene. The terrible night is over, but hunger and cold are slowly draining their strength. They manage to build a small trap and catch a squirrel. Right at the moment of joy over their small meal, they see a rescue helicopter flying directly above them. Forgetting about hunger, the men chase after the helicopter as it glimpses through the treetops. Bob screams at the disappearing helicopter and collapses onto the grass, completely exhausted. Desperate and losing faith, he is ready to give up. But Charles convinces him to fight for survival until the very end. Using a piece of a gold chain, the elderly billionaire makes a fishing lure and starts fishing. In the middle of it, the bear catches him by surprise and attacks. Charles manages to squeeze between fallen tree trunks, slowing the predator down, and runs to Bob. Together, they create a ring of fire to protect themselves from the beast. After a sleepless night waiting for another attack, Charles makes a decision. They must kill the bear. Using a drawing, he explains to Bob how to do it. The idea terrifies Bob, who views it as suicide, but Charles's confidence convinces him. Using materials at hand, they craft spears and bait the animal. The smell of blood attracts the bear, and confident in its power, it slowly approaches its prey. The man-eater steps on the target spot, and they trigger the trap, but it only causes a minor wound. Realizing their failure, the men run for their lives. In the riverbed, they set up a makeshift defensive position to face the bear's next attack. Their weapons are too primitive, and the beast barely even notices. With a single swipe of its clawed paw, the bear throws Bob aside, injuring him. Left face to face with the monster, Charles waits for the perfect moment. As the bear stands on its hind legs to attack, Charles braces his spear against the ground. The beast lunges forward, impaling itself and using its own massive weight to end its life. The bear provides them with food, and its hide becomes warm clothing. Now Charles and Bob feel ready to continue their journey. They have defeated the king of these forests. Soon they stumble upon an abandoned cabin. Inside they find a rifle, and on the riverbank, a canoe fit for travel. They decide to head downstream. While checking the area, Charles discovers a hidden bear trap, but chooses not to tell Bob. Later, to start a fire, Charles grabs the first piece of paper he finds inside the knife box Bob gave him. The paper turns out to be a receipt. It lists the engravings for the pocket watch, the knife, and a wristwatch that reads, "To Bob from Mickey, in memory of our knights." This discovery confirms Charles's worst fears about his wife's betrayal. He notices that Bob is drinking heavily and refuses to put down the rifle. Charles realizes the truth. Bob plans to get rid of him, as escaping alone in the canoe would be much easier. Finally, Bob finds the courage and asks the billionaire to step outside. Seeing Bob's hesitation, Charles slowly approaches him, trying to talk him down. Bob loses his nerve and keeps stepping backward. Suddenly, his next step proves fatal. He falls directly into the trap Charles had spotted earlier. One of the wooden stakes pierces the unlucky killer's thigh. Despite Bob's betrayal, Charles pulls him out of the pit and tries to administer first aid. Bob likely has a severed artery, and Charles knows he won't last long in these conditions. The only way out is to get the wounded man into the canoe as fast as possible and head downstream. Due to heavy blood loss, Bob is freezing, and his condition is rapidly worsening. Charles has no choice but to pull over to the shore and build a fire. Realizing he might not survive, Bob begs for forgiveness for trying to kill Charles. He assures the billionaire that Mickey was not involved and never planned to kill her husband. Suddenly, Charles realizes that the silence of the wilderness is broken by the sound of a helicopter engine. He spots the helicopter flying over the water. To catch the pilot's attention, he throws a wet branch into the fire. The rescuers notice the smoke and head toward them. Busy trying to signal the helicopter, Charles loses track of Bob. When he turns around, he finds only a lifeless body. Bob dies just moments before being rescued. Finally, Charles returns to civilization. On the porch of the mansion, he is met by his wife, reporters, and the Indian, Jack Hawk, the very man whose search disrupted the billionaire's peaceful life. Ignoring everyone else, Charles walks firmly toward Mickey and hands her Bob's watch, making it clear that he knows about her betrayal. When the journalists finally ask him how his friends died, he gives his answer. "They died saving my life." Charles tried to save the man who wanted to kill him. He did it not out of weakness, but because he was different, because he was a true human being. In the wild, where the weak perish and lies fade away, he proved why he achieved everything on his own, because he knew how to think, endure, and fight until the very end. And yes, he was clever enough to keep silent about the trap, because true strength lies not only in kindness, but in the ability to stay one step ahead. He was not broken by betrayal, fear, or infidelity. Behind Charles's polite and calm face, there was always a man who knew exactly who he was, and that knowledge is his real power.